Does everyone have their notebook in their hands? What is it? Do I have to turn around and check? Well, I'll have to, Ed, sorry, I already knows this. Yes, gather round so I can, and be shattered on the rocks of my wisdom. How about that? I like that? What is that? Can you see that? Can everyone see the pepper in there? Okay. So if I walk around and see anything more complicated than what I'm doing, I'm going to publicly chastise you. I'm just telling you that right now. Because this initial sketch is just, it's the crudest of thumbnails. That's it. That's all I need, right? Bang, done. How long did that take me? No time whatsoever. I'm looking to figure out the locals so that I can get my palette set up, so I can do my color note, and dive in.
I got the spoon.
Oh, I did get, you can't see a spoon right there? Doesn't that look like a spoon? Doesn't it look spoonish? Okay. All right, so let's see, where's my color note? Who's going to be my helper? Susie, you can't see. Good excuse.
I don't need this.
No. Who's going to be my helper? Barbara. Let's go with the pepper. Tell me what is the hue and value of the pepper. Remember the designation. We've got the hue, value, and then we'll get into the third component.
So it's the green. I don't think it's a green blue. It could be both green yellow. So green yellow, and it would be roughly
There?
yeah.
I think that's pretty close. It probably is going to have components of either side. I think most of you found yesterday, even I did when I was painting. And now we're even getting into natural objects, you're going to see it more. You know, you have fluctuations, the hue will slide back and forth. It's not a matter, even with the objects we painted yesterday, it was rarely, I think, a matter of just pulling right off of this from light to dark. Because of the light, because of ambient light, because of other things, the hue, whatever hue we started with, it tended to slide kind of back and forth with the adjacent hues. So again, we're looking for something, I think in the end, yeah, it's going to be probably somewhere in here, but I would rather lay out and I mentioned this to some of you yesterday, I'd rather lay out a whole step than try to mix something in between. I don't think it's going to end up here. I think that's as good a designation as right now. Green, yellow, value 5. Now, the question of chroma comes in. If I had my chart available, I could do this, or having done the chart, I would just say, well, I know it's not full intensity. It's not that. It's going to be somewhere less of that. Twisted peppers might be a little higher, I think. But I could pull out my green-yellow chart.
Now, Neil, I'm going to just interject here. These charts that you're looking at, they are available to you as a download. You just have to give me your email address, and one chart you can print out for all the colors if you have the desire to do that.
Oh, excellent.
Sorry.
What's that?
Apologies.
No apologies. No.
Email address.
I'll pass that over.
Now, the way each one of these charts is arranged, I have my neutral gray. And if you remember, now of course, the one thing I forgot, for those that were here last week, do you remember I had a wheel that had each one of these hues at different levels?
Yes.
Does anyone remember that? I made a point last week to say that on the outside of this hue circuit, as we know from mixing the strings of the threads, on the cool side of the spectrum, what comes out of the tube is not the highest intensity of the color, correct? That's when we get into the distinction between what? What is it called right out of the tube? There's a word for that. Home value. What is it called when it reaches its highest intensity? Full chroma. And they can diverge, right? When you're over in here, The red right out of the tube is home value at a 5, and it's its highest intensity. It's not going to get any more red than that. It's not going to get any more, chromatic than that. When we get into the cool side of the spectrum, we have a series of pigments that out of the tube, they are not very high in their chroma. So the home value and the full chroma are two different things. So the outside of the hue circuit represents each hue at its maximum intensity. So we can see, just like the rainbow, I mean, each one of these is we're trying to get them at maximum intensity, regardless of what their home value is. The point I made last week in terms of relating chromas, that blue at its highest chroma, at the fourth value, is not as intense as yellow-red at its highest chroma. They're both at their maximum chroma for each given chroma family, or each given color family. But you do not have the same chroma in terms of their intensity when we scale them out. What we try to do, and it has to do with again, I'm sorry, I forgot the chart. I really can kick myself. The cool colors are all, even at their maximum intensity, the cool colors are all less intense than the warm colors. That's really the way it works out. So if we try to create a scale of chroma there, what these charts are doing is, I'll just hold this up. Munsell originally started, and Sean can certainly inform me. I read Munsell's book written in, 1915, 1920, a couple days ago. Sean, do you remember, did Munsell originally in his book, did he set the highest chroma at 10?
I don't recall. I mean, his book initially was a work in progress anyways, right?
There were some parts that looked like he did that, but then his initial chroma charts did not do that.
Well, I think he may have found, at least when reading his letters, that as time went on and he kind of reformatted everything and revisited ideas and brought in criticism, pigments changed, intensities changed. All of a sudden they're moving from earth pigments to synthetic pigments, because chemistry had begun to pick up in the early 20th century. And so, I think maybe there was no need at first, but then eventually you just had to expect. You didn't have a choice.
Well, and the reason it popped, I'm sorry for having this little sidebar conversation, was I thought initially, since he was trying to designate everything with a decimal system, I thought that would make sense if he set 10 as the limit, and then if it grew beyond that, it did. Because it seems like chroma is that, it continues to grow, and it's a little harder to categorize than if you set a cap at 10, and everything would fit.
Well, it makes sense within the paradigm, right? I mean, you got 100 spaces on the wheel, 10 spaces in between each one, and I think, technically, 10 values not including black, right? So, it makes perfect sense.
The conversation, as you can pick up, I'm having with Sean is, when Munsell initially published this book, I think, and I could be totally wrong, that he initially set 10 steps out from neutral gray. That would be the highest intensity. Whatever the hue was, in this case it's between red and yellow-red, that was its highest intensity, maximum intensity was 10. And then everything would be categorized back from there. So if blue was, in the scale of intensity, blue at its most intense was half as intense as red, then blue would be halfway down the scale. Again, it's hard it's hard to explain, but over time, what Sean was saying, the chroma started to step out even more. And now you can get some, I mentioned last week, the fluorescent colors that are way further. The chroma chart would go all the way over here. All that aside, just having thrown that on the table, the chroma charts then recognize that you can see where red is located. Red is located a certain distance out from a core of neutral value. When we move to, say, blue-green or blue, you can see it's not stepping out as far, because blue, even at its maximum intensity, is not as intense as the reds or yellows. And without getting into making these charts, I'm just going to leave it right there. The point is every one of these strings, there are a variety of chroma, there are a variety of chromas of each one of these hues as you begin to add the neutral gray. And the chart will help you visualize that. So for what we're doing now, I'm going to pull out my green-yellow chart and see exactly, this is the string right off the color wheel. Each one of these values, that's my 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All I'm doing with each one of these values is adding its corresponding gray. So at the 8 value, there's my green-yellow right out of the tube, and all I've done is add the corresponding 8 gray, 8 neutral to it to bring its intensity down in a variety of steps. That's all I've done. So each one of the values is just added to its corresponding neutral to bring its intensity down. So I can see all of the chromatic possibilities I have of the green-yellow at every value. So I can use the chart again. When I made them, I don't carry them around with me unless I'm in client meetings, but at least I have a sense that I'm looking at an object at around the 5th value. Is it actually right off of the string at the 5th value, or am I going to have to reduce its intensity to some degree? And actually the pepper actually holds up, much to my surprise. I thought I'd have to probably get some chroma reduction in there. But the local of the pepper at the value 5, that looks pretty good. I mean, it's going to, as it goes up and down in value, I'm going to have to get more chroma reduction in there. But actually the local, I would say, is one of these, I wanted to pick something that wasn't as strong. I would still say that's green-yellow 5 strong. Because at least in the context of my chroma chart, it's all the way at one end. I mean, I don't think I'm going to have to get much of a neutral in there to have to bring that down. Now, other areas we're going to see it, I think we're going to see it a little more aggressively.
I have a question,
Yeah.
I don't want to discuss this and missed it, but when you use terms, say medium, strong, do you use low for the other one? Weak, use weak. Do you have a numerical notation? Like, so if you had to look at that Munsell chart in front of you, this is, just so we can clarify this, if you had to set sort of boundaries between the numbers.
Yeah.
So you would say maybe like 0 through, what do we have there, 16? So I mean, so would week be 0 through 3 or 0 through 4?
It works out something like that.
4 through 8 being...
I had it laid out at one point when I did mine in my studio, and I only had 9. I had it laid out, but I'd have to revisit that with this.
I'm just trying to give someone the ability to quantify here, so that if they had to sit down and actually... I know it's a little...
But without numbers, I think strong, medium, and weak is probably as good as we're going to get.
Okay.
So, yeah, but I understand your point. Yes, I did have that worked out.
No, I was just trying to see. I mean, obviously it's going to change, right, depending on the hue as well.
That's
You
right.
only have 4 steps in some, and other ones you have 16 steps.
Correct. Correct. And look, if anyone, again, the one detriment of having this whole lecture is without having the charts in front of you, I don't want to be talking over, like where you're thinking, huh, yeah, okay, I can't understand that. Stop me if you need some clarification, and I will try to explain this as much as I can without you having the tool in your hand. Let's go to the, let's go to the background, because that's a clear example. Someone give me, someone give me a hue designation of the background, hue and value.
Yellow, red, 3, 4, between 3 and 4.
Yeah, I think so. Yellow, red, I would say probably a 4 is a little better guess. The only problem is, I'm going to go to my yellow-red chart. Even 3 and 4. I'm going to have to get, I'm sorry, I keep trying to hold this up in a way everyone can see it. Looking at this, I think I'm going to, it's somewhere in here. And yeah, probably, Alina, you're probably right, it's probably closer to a 3, but I'm going to have to at least get some neutralization in there. I think it's getting closer to this. Some of that yellow light is affecting it, but I do think I'm going to have to get into a little neutralization of the brown, of the yellow-red once I get in there.
Actually, before you go further,
Yeah.
Could you explain the neutralization charts? I don't get it.
Can you be a little more specific about your question?
Okay, I can be more specific. So we have the star that we did,
Yes.
that everybody I think understands.
Yeah.
We're darkening it, to get lower values yet not kill the chroma too much. To keep it as chromatic as possible
Correct.
while darkening it.
Correct.
And then you have the charts that when you add the grayscale to, it neutralizes them further.
Each value, that's correct.
So with the orange that you have right now,
Yeah.
how would you do a chart like this if you wanted to make a chart like this?
The first thing is to take the most chromatic value, which is the cadmium orange, and put that in its proper place within the scale. And what Sean was saying, what we were talking about before is, let's say that for the purposes of argument, that when Munsell originally set his charts, he had the most intense hue set at 10 steps out from neutral, and then began to reduce the intensity from there. Over time, these charts have grown. We're now, in this case, it's out to 16 steps. The most intense hue is actually between yellow, red, and red. Or for those that have a color background, it's cadmium red light. That's effectively what your most intense hue is. And that would be 16 steps out in intensity. Orange is slightly less intense, it's one step back. So the starting point is to put my most intense hue at its proper value, at this chroma designation, and reduce that intensity. And then look at the other values in my string and figure out where they fall relative to the chroma right there. So that when you look at each one of these, when you look from top to bottom, the chromas should be similar.
What's the chroma designation? That's a whole different scale then, right?
It is a whole different scale, yeah. And that's the one, that's what I was saying to Sean, that's the kind of the X factor in this, because that can go out higher than just the 10. And that's, I think, why, personally, I don't know if you were in the room when I said that Aviano dropped the chroma charts, that there were ambiguities in there that it just, like, for me, it added this X factor. Like, I have to remember 18 steps out in chroma now? That's hard enough to... Well, but again, the thing is that unless I were to take this chart with me, all I'm thinking is the relation of strong, medium, weak. That's all that's usually going
nice
through my head.
to have them to refer to them.
That's right.
Who made these?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. Why?
That's why I'm asking, because I don't know if you just printed it out. Because if you printed it, it's not the same.
No, you have to do it. And part of the exercise is, as I say to students in the context of my class, part of what you're doing with all this is you're understanding the totality of what your paint box can give you.
Yes.
At least using the neutral. I mean, when you start mixing between hues, but at least you understand what every one of these strings can give you, and then you can begin to manipulate from there. So, but yeah, this is a little harder because it's, we don't have it packed into a neat decimal system. It's kind of floating out there. But once you do it, it starts to at least burn in your head, the chromatic variances of each one of these.
This answers my question from yesterday.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, remember I asked you what the point of black was?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So it, you gave me a even deeper answer. You gave me even more than I asked for. But
Good.
I didn't know you were going to show this.
Gotcha.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Well, and when you guys came in, and Chris, good morning, I mentioned that obviously today's, and some of these objects are a little more intense than I thought. Today's obviously object is we're going to work with something a little less intense than we were dealing with yesterday. But I think yellow, red, and now in this case, the yellow-red is somewhere around in here. But if I look and think about the scale of orange, I might be pulling off of my string or my thread right around this area. But if I think about the scale of orange, even if I'm pulling it right off of the string, in the scale of orange, this is definitely a medium chroma object, correct? Because it's not as chromatic as that. It's not as weak as this, like the back panel. I mean, that might be somewhere in here, which would be a weak yellow-red. So the brown itself, this brown, this yellow-red at the value, in the scale of orange, I know I'm looking at something that is midway between no chroma and high chroma. Is that clear? Is that clear?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is the chroma of every color relative to cad red light as the top chroma?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And in fact, what I neglected to do with the last one is, let me make the same point. With the green-yellow, now I even misdesignated it. If the green-yellow is somewhere around a 5, in here, 5-4, then again, for green, it's maybe closer to strong, but it isn't quite strong, right? Because in the scale of green-yellow, it's actually somewhere in the middle as well. Is that clear? Okay. Now, where this really comes into play, and in particular importance, is, and someone asked me earlier when the class began, in designing. Like most people think when they design with color harmonies, that you've got analogous, complementary, split complementary, triadic. All you're thinking about, and when someone who does that, all they're thinking about are hues. I might put red and blue-green, or I might put, red, purple, blue, green, yellow together. But usually what they're not thinking of is, well, how am I going to design with chroma? So it's not a matter of just putting particular hues together, but what is the chroma of those hues that I'm going to put together? So as I said, understanding where, like I might have a particular color harmony here, but everything in here is not the same chroma, or it might not be. I might have some strong chromas, some weak chromas. So when you're designing, it's not a matter of just thinking, well, let me get a red, an orange, and a purple thing out. You've got to think, how are the chromas going to relate as well? Am I going to have a red and an orange and a strong chroma, a green and a weak chroma, a purple and a medium chroma? So chroma has to play in terms of your overall design sense, not just doing what we're doing here, which is trying to color match.
I got another question for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Your questions are hard. Think about this. Remember, it's early. Go ahead. It's early in the morning.
I think that what would other people maybe have questions about later, and this is one, and we've discussed this at length. Most people are used to seeing a split complementary wheel, right, or triadic wheel, where yellow is across from, purple, and blue is across from orange. Now, on the Munsell wheel, these have all shifted slightly. So, for instance, your red purple is across from green yellow, and your orange is across from, it looks like blue green, is that correct?
Yeah.
So, or yellow red, pardon me.
It's blue. Actually, it's blue. No, it's go ahead.
But so there has been some shifts though from what the traditional complementaries are on a standard wheel. How does that affect neutralization? How would people in this class then begin to transfer over to a wheel like this? I mean, what are within? Because let's say maybe people here don't want to use the neutral grays.
Yeah.
But they do know that maybe you can get some sort of neutralization from a complementary.
Yeah, but does anyone remember last week I mentioned there's someone who put together a wheel that actually was trying to figure out what perfect pigment complements are?
There's a website, therealcolorwheel.com.
Is that the Quiller website?
No, it's not Quiller, it's Munsell.
Oh, really?
It is,
Did they figure out what the pigment complements are?
Yeah, he matches about 60 different pigments.
I didn't know that. Well, see, the
It's a
teacher
great website.
learns from the student. What was that? RealClearColor.com?
Therealcolorwheel.com.
Okay. That's not Robert Robeson, the guy who
I
wrote.
don't know that.
No, that's you sent it.
You know what? I made a mistake. Last week I thought that you were right. The Quiller wheel looks a lot like the real color wheel. He does a lot with pigmentations, and he calls it like a crystal wheel at some point on his website. It's kind of a hard website to navigate, correct?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So I was wrong actually last week when we spoke about it, but she's right. I can look it up for you to tell you.
Yeah, I'd be interested. We can take a look at it since you have the computer. To your question, and Sean, you're basically asking that if someone were to switch over to Munsell color wheel, I mean, how would you get over the fact that if I mix yellow and purple blue together, I'm not going to get neutral?
Well, here's the problem, right? So, maybe from here you guys have all this knowledge. You start to implement it. Now you go to another workshop. Maybe you're at a plein air workshop. Maybe you're at another still life workshop. All of a sudden, someone pulls out a color wheel and says, "This is your color wheel," and you're like, all of a sudden, you're going Munsell triadic, Munsell. What do I do? So you go off and you ask a question. Well, I was just at this workshop where this guy showed me the Munsell wheel, and the complementaries were different. I want you guys to walk away with a reason why it's set up like this, which we know, we've spoken about, but also how to talk to somebody and show them, hey, look, we can live in a world of both wheels. So, right, so I'm just trying to create some sort of dialogue to deal with bridging those two wheels, because the other wheel's never going to go away. The triadic wheel's always going to exist. So, does that make any sense? I'm just trying to give you a groundwork, or some of the groundwork. I know it's a tough sort of, it can get quite, we could spend the next 4 hours on this easy.
Yeah.
But, I would hate for someone to go away and get caught blindsided by a question in relation to this with another artist. I want to make sure all bases are covered.
Well, again, I'm not sure that's such an open-ended question, though.
I know.
If you're dealing with mixing complements, then you're still going to have to figure out what pigments complement each other. I mean, even on, I think we talked about last week, even on a regular color wheel, red and green don't make gray. So even within the context of when I'm teaching my students the regular pigment primary wheel, we always have to have that conversation that what you learned in school that complements neutralize each other is not correct. Orange and blue don't make gray. Orange and purple blue make gray. So I usually have to tell them, don't just assume that I'm going to pick color A here and color B there, and I'm going to mix them and I'm going to get this perfect thing. You have to kind of rotate around the wheel and play around with combinations, because it also has to do with manufacturers. So, yes.
I just when, like, I didn't know about this, but when we paint, we put this, like, the complements together, and if it doesn't work, you add a little white, you add a little black, you add a little different. You put that gray that you use in there without knowing it.
Right.
That's how we end up with the color we want.
Right. Right.
Like here, you're just adding the grays
Correct.
to get the chroma down.
Correct.
On the wheel, we've added raw umber.
Yeah, there's chroma reduction already occurring in various
But
ways.
This chart only has gray. It
It's
doesn't
just-
have any other color.
That's
outside.
correct. That's correct. And look, you probably noticed if you were watching me paint yesterday, when I pulled in some of the yellow, red, and the purple, blue, that's because I was trying to bring the intensity down without putting the gray in. And I was doing that reflexively. Like I was watching myself do it thinking,
Yeah.
now I'm the teacher that I hated, where he tells me to do one thing and then he's doing something else. But it's so reflexive that there are very few people I've met that actually even train this way, just use the neutral gray. They're out there, and Riley certainly used it, but Riley was very clear in his notes that the complementary color neutralization is all over the map. I mean, it can be very inconsistent when you try to utilize it. And he was thinking, let me get this done, let me get it done fast, it's going to print, I'm not worried about, Rembrandt type of color with all these layers of things going on. He wanted to be able to knock that chroma down, get it on, and move on. But, with that said, experimenting with complementary color neutralization can actually yield certain color combinations that you would never think of, that you would never get here. You'd never get here. So, but to Sean's question, you cannot just pull off of any existing color wheel, and I think even Quiller's got to be the same. I'll have to check this website out. Because Quiller did it for watercolor. And when I look at some of this other color wheel we're talking about, when I look at some of the combinations he laid out, I'm thinking, I've worked with those oils, and they don't do what he's saying they do. But he's working with watercolor. So, again, I have to...
This is a real color, it's a transparent watercolor.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean...
Oh, no.
No, it's okay.
Well, you know what this whole conversation though yields, and this is why I keep saying it.
Another.
I'm not against theory, but I don't give a damn. Excuse me, I don't give a damn about theory. Like it's great, but and that's why this all helped me when after my 4-year degree, was it made me lay out the color in a way that was systematic and clear. But I still knew that it doesn't answer every question. And I can't just, and those of us that use this, what we often get criticized for being is formula painters. Well, you're not responding to what's in front of you. No, there's nothing formulaic about this. It's a method. It's a logical method, but every situation you've got to pull out another arrow from your quiver. I might have to, in the process of laying this out, do a variety of different things to get the color that's in front of me that isn't just take color A and put it in spot B. But at least when you do it, when you have to deviate from how things are laid out, you're doing it intelligently. You know at least to some degree where you're going, and if you had to reproduce it, you can do it. Rather than those palettes that you see that have 50 different color combinations on it that they're random, they're indiscriminate, and you just hope to God that one of them hits or gets close to what you think you need. And then if you had to reproduce it, well, then you have to take all that time to get back to that same point instead of just going right to the hue. Did someone have a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just an observation. I've studied under somebody that does the 50 color, and then I've studied under somebody that does the strings.
Yeah, okay.
The strings get me painting faster,
Yeah.
and I'm more sure of what I'm doing when I go
Yeah,
in.
and
And
again-
I still have to create, but
But again, to the point is that if there's a perfect color wheel out there that answers all these questions, that's great, and I just don't know about it. But to my understanding, every one of them is like everything in life. It doesn't answer every question. It might get a little closer in some areas, but it loses in some areas, in other areas. And as I said last week, this has been reorganized, the Munsell wheel was reorganized